Welcome to another Pastor's Chat with
G'day.
Coley and Tonks. Fantastic to have you along with us. And please remember to share this content. Remember to comment below. We'd love to continue to chat and hear about what your top three things are of a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
But we've got a great topic today. What are we talking about today?
Well, an interesting topic that I thought was worth sharing is it came out of a conversation I had just last weekend. We're just beginning to get our bathroom renovated.
Nice.
So I was meeting with one of our tradesmen, and as we're going through the plans and picking colours and all the stuff that matters to wives, he just said to me out of the blue, "Why did you want to become a minister?"
Yeah, right.
Because obviously we've had that conversation, what do you do for a
friendly
living
plumber.
and things like that. And I've had a lot of people say to me, "Why are you a Christian?" I've had that conversation with people from basketball, neighbours, people who you just sort of know generally. But for someone to actually ask specifically, "Why did you want to be a minister?" It was a little different. And I thought, well, maybe it'd be a great opportunity today for me to share about my calling, and then next week for you to share about your calling. So,
great.
why are we ministers?
Yep.
How did we feel that sense that God was calling us in to do this as a full-time career calling on our
Definitely.
life?
That'd be very fascinating to hear. Well, tell us about it.
So it might be something you're interested in. So I hope that what we share today and
That's
next
it.
week just encourages you. So I suppose for mine, my calling into ministry is very closely connected to my overall testimony. And I don't want to retread on that too much. I've shared it in a number of messages. But I was a teenager feeling a little bit aimless, not really feeling where I was to be heading in life. Typical kind of thing. I'd go on, do I join the Air Force? Do I be a policeman? Going through all those things as you do as a teenager. But anyway, then my church got a youth pastor by the name of David Yardley. And through his ministry and through his care for me as a bit of a aimless, wild teenager, he modelled the love of Jesus into my life. And through him, I came to know Jesus as Lord and Saviour and really felt that my life was absolutely transformed.
That's great.
And so it began with, I suppose, simply a desire for what David did for me, I want to be able to do for others, particularly at the time for other young people, help them discover Jesus and have their lives
That's right.
transformed. Maybe that's a bit like
Yeah,
yourself.
very similar for me. You'll see next week, I guess,
Yeah.
but very similar. Yeah.
So David was our youth pastor for 3 years,
Yep.
and then he'd originally come from Perth. He'd done 3 years at our church and then decided that it was time to return to Perth. So a number of us were pretty
only 3 years.
heartbroken. Yeah, I know. But just, I think it was like a day or two before he left, he came to see me and he said, "Andrew, I just wanted to share with you something. I want to share that I had a dream about you last night." I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "I had a dream that you were standing at a pulpit preaching the gospel."
Nice.
And at that time, I kind of thought, "Oh, that'd be cool," because I wanted to be like David. I wanted to be in that. But it was more of a, I don't know, maybe even like a fantasy more than a real reality.
Yep.
But after he'd shared that with me, it just stayed in my mind, and I continued to think about it, pray about it. My very good friend David Westaway, who was quite an important mentor in my life as a young Christian, I talked to him a little bit about it. And really, as I more and more unpacked that dream and what that dream meant for me, the more I started to realise that was God calling me to be that person who was standing at a pulpit and preaching the gospel. So then, as that desire became so real to me as a 16-year-old, very enthusiastic young Christian, I started just diving into every opportunity I could get to just serve God and serve the church. So if there was a job going at church, I'd be there. If there was a meeting at the church, I'd be there. If there was a prayer meeting, I'd be there. I started doing courses like through Fusion Australia, through Churches of Christ. I'd go and do youth ministry, training sort of courses, discipleship stuff about being a Christian, all that kind of thing. I suppose just that desire. I shared a couple of times over. One thing I actually attended was called Melbourne Gathering, and it was run by Fusion Australia, and it was run the week before my Year 12 exams, and when everyone was meant to be using the school holiday time, in that September school holidays to study for end of year Year 12 exams. I went to Melbourne and did a week-long course on evangelism and discipleship and stuff like that. And I remember getting back to school on the Monday, and the vice principal's giving us all a lecture, I hope you've all been at home studying, and someone decided to yell out, Tonks, he went down to Melbourne and did some Jesus thing, and got in trouble off the vice principal.
No.
But it was almost like, not that I wanted to neglect school, but I was so sure by then of my calling to go into ministry that school almost lost its desire, lost its interest in me.
It's hard to concentrate sometimes.
Yeah.
You feel like
I didn't want to be in school.
go.
I wanted to be learning more about, Jesus and more about ministry and evangelism and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I did. And so then over time, I met with my minister and again, other mentors in my life, and it shaped that calling until 1993, a year after Coley and I got married. We went off to Wollongong.
Essendon won the premiership that year, I think.
Maybe.
Baby Bombers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And went off to Wollongong for Bible college.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. So
now it's history. So you went from Ballarat to Wollongong.
Yep.
And what happened then? What happened next?
Oh, well, I was 3 years at Wollongong, working very actively. So, I wanted to be youth pastor.
Yep.
Just like David, my youth pastor, wanted to be youth pastor.
Where all the cool pastors go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
So I did all did my Bachelor of Theology, my Diploma of Ministry, very, very active in the Wollongong Church of Christ, a very large church with a very, very big youth ministry, very contemporary worship style. That was great. But as you get to the end of that third year, it's like, got to get a job. So a number of churches started getting in touch with the Bible College asking, and one of the churches was the Hobart City Church of Christ. So went down there, did the whole interview process, and had 5 great years of a youth pastor down at Hobart.
Excellent.
Yeah. But I'm not at Hobart anymore.
No, you're not. So did you get called to Mildura, or did you just find a job just sitting there?
Well, no, that was an interesting part of it. Is I was loving Hobart. That was a growing church, a growing youth ministry, a very, very fruitful ministry. I loved the church. I loved the people. And I'd had a number of calls. Oh, cold.
Yeah, but it was real cold. Probably coming from Ballarat wouldn't be a huge jump, I suppose.
Yeah, but I'd been in Wollongong for 3 years. And Wollongong's
just near
quite
the
a
beach.
temperate,
great
warm.
spot.
Yeah. But I'd had a number of calls. Other churches contacted, asking if I'd want to be their youth minister or general minister. But I very, very quickly rejected those calls every time. Like I didn't want to leave Hobart. I loved Hobart. But then one day, Simon Risson, who was the minister here at Mildura at the time, and actually a childhood friend of mine, his dad, Roger Risson, baptised me as a 14-year-old kid.
It's actually a member of our church, Sandy Thomas. He helped disciple Sandy, I believe,
Yeah?
way back when.
Wow.
I remember Sandy telling me. I was like,
Small world.
It is.
Yeah, so Simon and I grew up together in the church as teenagers, and we led the youth ministry at the York Street Church of Christ together with his wife Andrea and obviously my wife Kylie and a couple of other friends. So we'd been very, very close for quite a long time. But he rang me up one day and asked me if I would prayerfully consider coming to Mildura. And my initial response, even though I didn't verbalise it, was like, oh, no, I don't want to leave Hobart. Yeah. But then I couldn't shake the thought. I kept thinking about Mildura. So I prayed a lot about it. I had 2 mentors down in Hobart, Mort Denwer, who was a real absolute prayer warrior, and Greg Foote. They were my 2 mentors. So I spoke with them and I prayed, and prayed with them. And the more we talked, the more we prayed, the more I spent a lot of personal time in prayer, the more I started to think, I think God is really calling me to Mildura. So again, Coley and I came up and we spent about 4 or 5 days here. We came to the church, had a good time just meeting a few people, meeting the elders and the board and looking at the whole district and things
Didn't
like
look
that.
like this though, did it?
No, it was very different than what we've got now.
Bit tackier.
But then I just really, really felt this is where God wanted me to be.
That's awesome.
So probably the hardest decision in my life was leaving Hobart. I was having panic attacks over telling my senior pastor Clinton, telling some of the young people in the church. It was pretty hard. But now here we are 20 years later. Came as the youth pastor, 2005, became the senior pastor, which is, I suppose, another bit of a step
there.
Yeah, like I didn't want to be a senior pastor. I wanted to be a youth pastor in my life.
It's when you hung up your cool, retired your
Absolutely.
cool
I became like an old dag. Now, whatever, it's like Simon was here as the senior pastor. I came as the youth pastor. But unfortunately, 6 months after I got here, Simon gave notice to leave the church.
Dog, mate.
Yeah, what have I done?
It's always reason.
So then we got a new senior pastor, Blair, and 2 years later, he resigned as well. Thought, what have I done? I keep running out these
like working with you.
ministers. So then at an elders meeting, the elders said, well, Andrew, we want you to consider being the senior pastor. I thought, I don't want to be a senior pastor. I just wanted to be in an associate youth ministry role all the time. But as much as like Simon and Blair had, particular reasons of moving on, I was really falling in love with this church. And that was probably my mind. I'm thinking to myself, I'm loving this church.
Great place.
And I wanted to stay. So I thought, if I'm loving it and I want to stay, maybe that's God's way of letting me know that it's time to step into a new role as the team leader or as the senior pastor of this church. So to the elders' credit, which I'll be always very grateful, I said to them, I want 6 months to think about it. And that's quite a while.
That is a long time. Patient elders.
Yeah, but it helped to really cement that I was making the right decision. So that's since 2005 I've been the team leader. Here we are 15 years later.
Crazy.
20 years after I started here as a youth pastor. And I'm probably more in love with this church than I was 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
But you didn't think you'd be running an online church in 2020, 15 years later?
I said to a few people lately, you might feel this, I never became a minister to make videos, but we're doing the very best in this current climate.
Still getting the gospel out there.
That's right, that's right.
Do what you can.
So that's all part of my call. And
it's an unreal story.
And I God could show up tomorrow and who knows, but I'm really hoping that I'll probably buy a cemetery plot here and that'll be the end of it here.
It's just up the road from you, isn't it?
Yeah, there is.
Out there,
and gladly, Kylie feels exactly the same. She loves this church. She loves this area. Our
kids look pretty settled here.
They're real home.
At least two of them.
Well, Josh and Ethan have both married local girls and both working full time, and Ethan's studying to be a teacher here. They're pretty keen to stay, and this really is our home. As much as we lived in Ballarat, or grew up in Ballarat, lived in Wollongong, lived in Hobart, we loved all those places. This really is home.
And it's a great story. Great story.
I hope we'll be here for many, many years to come.
Awesome. I hope you like that story as much as I did. Thought those were awesome. And how are you called into your careers? How are you? Do you ever prayerfully consider lots of stuff? Maybe you're a person who feels like you've been called into ministry yourself. So do we think about the calls and where God leads us? And that's a great story of obedience. So
and giving God the opportunity to speak to us and listening to His lead.
Yeah, well, 6 months. That's a very important part of it. So. Hope you were inspired as much as I was through that.
Terrific. So next week, we're going to hear about your call to ministry.
That's it. And we'll see what it's like.
Fantastic. All right. So if you've got questions about our call, please ask them. You can pop some comments down below.
That's it. Comment below.
Give us a call.
Yep.
And share the video. Share this video with your family and friends. But
that's it.
Next week, we'll be hearing about
Josh's
call.
See you next week.
Great. God bless you all.